Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
I've never understood open casket. I don't get it. It's like, you told me he was dead. I believed you. What is this, some bull coming in? I'm calling bull. All right? No, he had a lot of credit card debt. He wasn't getting along with his wife. Perfect candidate to fake his own death. All right, let's go. Open it up. Open it up. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you got. All right, that's pretty good. Pretty good. He looks pretty dead, but you know, Frank likes to around, so leave it open. Let's see what we got.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, March the 19th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Let me be lonely. You won't believe me, I'm the only. I'd rather be lonely than happy with somebody else. You're my fire, nighttime, the right time for kissing. Nighttime is my time for reminiscing. Regretting instead of forgetting with somebody else. There'll be no one unless that someone is you. I intend to be independently blue. I want to love, but I don't want to bother. Have it today and give it back tomorrow. Your love is my love. There's no love for nobody else. love me or leave me, let me be lonely. You won't believe me, I love you only. I'd rather be lonely than happy with somebody else. You're my fire, the night time, the right time for kissing. Nighttime is my time for reminiscing. Regretting instead of forgetting with somebody else. There'll be no one unless that someone needs you. I intend to be independently blue. I wanna love, but I don't wanna borrow. Have it today to give it back tomorrow. Your love is my love, there's no love for nobody else.
Thank you. And now the headlines for Wednesday, March the 19th. Man stabbed in upper body at Universal City Metro Station. Orange County deputy stabbed in the neck by man in San Clemente, suspect at large. Cancer rates are rising in younger adults. NASA astronauts emerge from capsule after successful splashdown. First batch of 911 calls obtained from start of Eaton fire. Man allegedly bit another passenger on plane landing at LAX. Previously classified files related to JFK assassination released. Gal Gadot receives star on Hollywood Walk of Fame. Woman recounts tragic crash that killed deputy in Victorville. And those were the headlines for Wednesday, March the 19th. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the political corner.
Countries. You're working on helping the blind see and all of these other things. Is it really come down to the basic, you're aligned with President Donald Trump, who also is a friend of mine, and that you have identified well over $100 billion in waste, fraud, abuse that our federal government never should have been spending? Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, it turns out when you take away people's, what the money they're receiving fraudulently, they get very upset, and they basically want to kill me because I'm stopping their fraud, and they want to hurt Tesla because we're stopping this terrible waste and corruption in the government. And, I guess they're bad people. Bad people will do bad things.
Well, I know that overall, financially, in the end, yes, they can hurt you, but the people that they'll end up hurting are the people that work in your dealerships that may risk losing their job. The people that they may end up hurting are the people that work on the line and build the Teslas. They're going to be the ones hurt. And that to me is despicable on their part, just because they might have a political difference or perceived political difference.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the patriotic short.
All right, let's talk a little about the international scene. The long-awaited second front in the Israeli war seems to have started this week. Not just the pagers, but they're bombing all over the Lebanon yesterday and today. Here's what Kamala Harris said this week about what we should do when the war is over. No reoccupation of Gaza. No changing of the territorial lines of Gaza. And an ability to have security in the region for all concerned in a way that we create stability. I feel like if that's what you have to say, don't say anything. Just shut up. I mean, everybody who talks about Israel these days is just so full of shit. I mean, or just not, I don't want children to die. Duh, who does? None of us want children to die. None of us want this war to go on. But it's not addressing what the problem is.
And that was the patriotic short. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of motivation.
A lot of us have big dreams, big goals. And when you have goals that are maybe outside your reach, you have to know that getting to that goal, you're going to have a lot of bad days, a lot of setbacks. Failure is going to happen. So how fast do you get up from that? But the biggest key to success in anything you do is you got to have an unlimited supply of fire, this drive and passion that I'm going to be somebody. It has to be there because on all those bad days and all those days you don't want to do stuff, you have to be your own motivator, your own coach, your own trainer, your own everything. You have to come into work ready to go. You may have failed miserably yesterday. People are like, man, you just lost everything. How the hell are you just staying motivated? Because this is what it takes. This is what it takes.
When you decide acting in your best interest, you're going to lose some friends. Everybody's not going to approve of you. There's some people that won't like you. Who do you think you are? You're arrogant. What do you think you can do? You think you can get away with that? You're selfish.
Get away from these people that's in your life that ain't doing nothing. Get away from people in your life that's hating. Get away from them. Get away from them.
You ever heard said one spoiled apple will spoil a whole barrel? One negative person can spoil your whole life. Leave the flakes alone. People that are seriously not serious.
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. If you have a dream, you have to protect it. When people can't do something themselves, they want to tell you you can't do it. Don't let these negative people turn you away from what you want. Just stay focused on where you want to go.
If you can just keep hope alive, you can make it. Because if you keep hoping, it is really faith. You just got to transpose it into I hope this happened to I believe this can happen.
See, a lot of people have an idea or a dream and they give up on it. No, don't do that. Work your dream until it gets hard. Most things don't happen as soon as we think they should happen. Any number of things can happen to interrupt your flow. It's okay. Don't take it personal. Just acknowledge what's going on. It's called life and keep on working on your dream because this is your life. This is what you love. This is your passion. And feel within yourself that everything is going to work out for you. But you must be patient, persistent, and positive, no matter what.
When you grinding hurts. Grinding is a sacrifice. Grinding costs. When you're grinding and your body tell you hurt, you stop. When you hurt, you stop. When you feel pain, you stop. When you tired, you stop. When you disappointed, you stop. When somebody get in your ear, you stop. Some of you a beast until it's uncomfortable. You a beast when everything is going right. But sometimes stuff start happening when it's uncomfortable. You start to break. You start to bend. You start to fold. It ain't always going to be the way you like it. The conditions ain't always going to be perfect. But if you want this, if you really want this, you got to learn to sacrifice. You got to learn to give up to go up. Because skill can't get you past certain things. Agility can't get you. You got to have mental toughness.
Now, whatever goal you have, you're going to have some difficulties. You're going to have some challenges. Long journey, long dark night. But when you hold on to your dream, don't let anybody kill it in you. When it doesn't make sense to anybody, including you sometimes, just hold on. Once you give yourself an opportunity to try and to stretch, you'll find out you can do more than you can ever begin to imagine.
And if you quit, if you falter, if you stop, all the pain will be for nothing. You don't quit on me. You man up. You woman up. You get your life back. I mean mental toughness. Be persistent. I mean get up at 3 o'clock in the morning even when you don't see results. You made a commitment to get up at 3, so you get up at 3. You do as many reps as you said you were going to do. And you got to get to a point where you are locked into the process. So every day you do it on Monday. You come back and do it Tuesday. You come back and do it Wednesday. You come back and do it Thursday. You come back and do it Friday. You are persistent. You fall, you get right back up. Don't stop for a week. Don't stop for a month. Don't stop for a year. You fail a class, you go right back and take it again. Don't stop. Don't quit. Don't give up. Why? Muscle memory. You do it over and over and over. Every time you get better and better and better. And repetition deepens the impression in your mind. Those motor skills, you start implanting that thing. You do it over and over and over and over and over again. You start implanting stuff and then boom, memory kicks in. And you come up against that thing. You gotta outdo that thing. And you can't do it when you scared. You got to already make up your mind before you get to that exam and pass that exam. You got to make up in your mind when you talk to that singer. You got to look at it before you even get to it. So don't you ever give up. As long as you got breath in your nostrils, don't you ever give up. Don't you ever give in, because I never told you it would be easy. But with mental toughness, you can get it done.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Daily Stoic.
A cure for the self. The person who has practiced philosophy as a cure for the self becomes great of soul, filled with confidence, invincible, and greater as you draw near. Seneca, Moral Letters, 111.2. What is a cure for the self? Perhaps Seneca means that through nature and nurture, we develop a unique set of characteristics, some positive and some negative. When those negative characteristics begin to have consequences in our lives, some of us turn to therapy, psychoanalysis, or the help of a support group. The point? To cure certain selfish, destructive parts of ourselves. But of all the avenues for curing our negative characteristics, philosophy has existed the longest and helped the most people. It is concerned not just with mitigating the effects of a mental illness or a neurosis, but it is designed to encourage human flourishing. It's designed to help you live the good life. Don't you deserve to flourish? Wouldn't you like to be great of soul, filled with confidence and invincible to external events? Wouldn't you like to be like the proverbial onion, packed with layers of greatness? Then practice your philosophy.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, The Exorcist.
Everything I've said today, it can be boiled down to one thing, and that is the principle of charity. Love God with your whole heart. God has to be everything. Everything for God. Everything. Whereas the demons are anything but God. Even if it means getting you sucked into doing all sorts of work at the church, doing all sorts of other things that are on a spiritual level that normally speaking would be good. As long as your focus isn't on God, they're happy. Because they envy us. They envy the fact that you and I one day could see him, and that vision would be for all eternity. They envy us. They envy our life. The fact that we can have a normal conversation without hating each other, and actually we can love each other, and we can actually be concerned about each other's well-being and things like that. They don't get to experience any of that. But ultimately what they really envy is the fact that we get to see God.
And that was The Exorcist. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, the only proper moral purpose of a government is to protect man's rights, which means to protect him from physical violence, to protect his right to his own life, to his own liberty, to his own property, and to pursuit of his own happiness. Without property rights, no other rights are possible. Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter, The Objectivist Ethics, from the book, The Virtue of Selfishness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, as far as the situation with the Tren de Agua gang members that were deported, and there was apparently a lawsuit to get a restraining order, and they ended up getting deported anyways. Here's a little something from Fox News at night.
I actually think that Justice Department is right on this one. I think that district judges only have the power over people who happen to appear in their court. They don't have the ability to tell the entire federal government how to run their personnel policies or who they can hire and fire.
So there you go. That's exactly right, because it's called separate but equal. There was a president, I don't remember exactly who it was, that had a Supreme Court ruling that went against him, and his response to it was, fine, they've made their ruling, now let them enforce it. Well, of course, since they're not in the executive branch, they can't enforce it. Okay, so that's the issue here. The judge doesn't have the authority to tell the executive branch what to do. The judges offer opinions, and that's it. So the judge can say that according to the law, this is right, this is wrong, that's fine. But the executive branch has the authority, of the apparent authority, to deport people, and that's it. And the judge has nothing to say about it. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Stewart of Varney.
Soon. Ashley Webster's in for Stu this morning. Ashley, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley Webster in today for Stuart Varney. Okay, in a wide-ranging interview with Laura Ingraham, President Trump doubling down on his commitment to remove migrant gang members from America, despite ongoing challenges from federal courts. Plus, Vladimir Putin agreeing to a partial ceasefire with Ukraine after a 90-minute call with the president. President Trump, by the way, expected to speak with Ukrainian President Zelensky later today. The astronauts, the NASA astronauts, finally home. Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore splashing down in the Gulf of America after being stranded in space for more than 9 months. But Elon Musk told Sean Hannity that rescue could have happened much, much sooner. He continues to say that. Musk also responding to the violent attacks targeting Tesla dealerships across the country. This as the FBI is now investigating in Las Vegas, where at least 5 Tesla vehicles were set on fire. All right, to the markets. Oh, yeah, it's Fed decision day. The Federal Reserve expected to hold interest rates steady. At least that is what the Fed funds futures are telling us. As for the markets, after another sell-off session yesterday, we are slightly higher in the pre-market today. Let's take a look at the 10-year Treasury yield if we can. Just down ever so slightly, under 4.3% at 4.28. In fact, it's unchanged. Let's take a look at the 2-year yield. That is rising up 3 basis points at 4.07%. What about Bitcoin? Has been selling off. It's come back a little bit, up about $1,500 at 83,725. All right, now this. NVIDIA debuting the next generation Vera Rubin super chip. Investors, well, they like it. Take a look at the stock. It is up today. We're going to be talking about this a lot. Meanwhile, the CEO, Jensen Huang, also demonstrating a humanoid robot, Creepy, and said that the robot revolution, it's closer than you think. I believe it. On today's show, President Trump is set to meet with U.S. oil and gas leaders to talk tariffs and trade. Coming up, we're going to be talking to Energy Secretary Chris Wright about America's energy dominance. Plus, President Trump's recent firing of 2 Democratic commissioners at the Federal Trade Commission. Those commissioners say they were illegally fired. We're going to speak with FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson about what happens next. It is Wednesday, March the 19th, 2025.
And that was let's see, what is his name now? Ashley of Webster, subbing for the Stewart of Varney. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now an article from the American Thinker. At Columbia, the janitors held hostage by pro-Hamas mob strike back. As if being a janitor at Columbia University weren't tough enough, what with spoiled, entitled brats littering the hallways and leaving half-eaten sandwiches for them to clean up in the student lounges, endlessly nattering about their futures being so bright they've got to wear shades, the janitors have also had to scrub swastikas and getting taken hostage, too, as part of their package. So now they're hitting back. Quote, janitors from Columbia University have filed a discrimination complaint citing the abuse they suffered at the hands of Free Palestine protesters. And unquote. And that is from Hen Mazig, whoever that is. And let's see. Well, now they are striking back with this civil rights case, which is likely to find in their favor. But more important, it's bound to make it very hard for Columbia's brass to claim they wouldn't dream of tolerating or creating an anti-Semitic atmosphere on campus, which is the rationale for President Trump targeting $400 million in federal funding, and that the protests were just a free speech issue. It's got to be pretty bad if your janitors get taken hostage over a supposed free speech issue. How are they going to deny that they tolerate anti-Semitism on campus or insist that they support free speech with an investigation like this coming at them that looks like they're going to be a win for the janitors? All it's likely to do is strengthen the case for their defunding. Maybe next time they won't tolerate this kind of garbage on campus the way they did, buttressing the wokesters as the humble janitors paid the price. So again, this is a erstwhile conservative, probably Republican, and so he's factually correct on everything but misses the point. And the point here is you cannot use rights to defeat somebody else's rights. You cannot use your right to free speech to silence somebody else. You cannot use your freedom to assemble and to associate to block other people from doing likewise. You cannot use your freedom of movement to block other people from being able to freely move about campus. And in this case, again, hostage, this is just simple kidnapping. All of this kind of stuff would end if the Department of Justice would simply sue these people as individuals and as groups and prosecute them criminally and civilly for violating the civil rights of the people that they're disturbing on campus. Back in a minute. Thank you. So, good for the Republicans on the continuing resolution. This is something I was meaning to say and forgot to earlier. And it's not from the content standpoint. I don't even know what's in the continuing resolution. I'm just looking at the dynamics of this continuing resolution. The left, the Democrats are always able to create a dynamic in which they go ahead and create a bill and then submit it for, let's say they'll create it in the Senate or in the House and then move it to the Senate, and then the Republicans are in the position of having to vote it up or vote it down, and if they vote it down, then they're the ones that are shutting down the government, right? So the Republicans this time around were able to create the opposite dynamic, where the Republicans went ahead in the House, created a bill, sent it to the Senate, and put the Democrats on the spot. If the Democrats don't vote for it, they get blamed for it. They get blamed for shutting down the government, which is something they don't want to do. That's the essence here. It's the thing that, again, the Republicans are right about the details of the continuing resolution. It's too much money. It's wasted money over here, wasted money over there. I'm sure they're absolutely right. I don't even know what's in it, but I'm sure there's a lot of waste in it. And there's a lot of money going for projects that I disapprove of. But it's the dynamic, and that's what the Republicans always miss. They're missing the point. The point is the dynamic. And if you can control the dynamic, then you can start worrying about what's the content of the bill, what's in it. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 12, Part 2 of Apollo.
2. To get control of the program, Shea called in his new assistant, Tom Markley, and said to him that somehow they had to keep this thing on track. "Go out and fix me a management tool," he told Markley. Markley sent his men out to look at the major aerospace companies and their sophisticated management control centers. Then Markley himself went to visit what everyone said was the best of them all at the Martin Company. It was beautiful, Markley thought, sort of a management war room. He figured he would set something like that up for Joe, which would be a big relief to Markley because, until he did, Shea was expecting him to know all the answers. Whenever Markley didn't know something, he had to live with Joe riding the living hell out of him until he found out. So it was best if I got a good system going. Shea turned the Martin model down flat. Markley submitted a revised plan, scaled down a little. Shea turned that down flat too. This is ridiculous, Markley thought. So finally he walked in and asked Shea what kind of management system he wanted. Shea told him. What he wanted, Markley said, was to get a notebook every Thursday night, and in it he wanted the entire program structured, meaning all the interfaces with Marshall, everything going on with the command module, everything going on with the service module, everything going on with the SLAW, everything going on with guidance and navigation, everything going on with the LEM, everything going on with the launch pad, the ground support equipment, with General Electric, everything Boeing was doing, everything everyone was doing. LEM refers to the Lunar Excursion Module, the lunar lander. The word excursion was insisted upon by Owen Maynard and others at Langley who wanted to emphasize its limitations. Eventually, headquarters shortened the official title to Lunar Module, and the official abbreviation was shortened to LM. Everyone continued to call it the LEM, so we have compromised with purity by spelling it LEM throughout the book. The SLAW was the spacecraft lunar adapter, the slanted section just below the CSM that contained the lunar module during the launch. SLAW is pronounced slaw as in coal. All this was to be in one notebook and should include not only what had been done in the last 7 days, but also comparisons against the programmed schedule and costs. And so Markley went away to produce the first edition of the loose-leaf notebook that he and his staff would prepare for Shea every week for the next 165 weeks. Each notebook ran to more than 100 pages and was on Shea's desk by close of business Thursday. Shea would get up at 4 a.m. Friday and start to annotate it, usually with technical comments and instructions, occasionally with remarks such as, "You've got to be kidding." He would work on the notebook intermittently from Friday morning through the weekend and return it to Markley on Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, everyone in the ASPO network would have gotten his response from Shea. With the annotated notebook in his hands, Markley became the action officer. I'd take this notebook, and then I'd fan it back out very quickly and say, "Hey, we've got these questions, and I want the answers in the notebook by this Thursday." We'd get the answers back, and then we'd take Joe's marked-up notebook and start off in the front, anything he had marks on. We'd have the answers there, and then we'd have the brand-new section with the newest status, too. The scrawled notations to and fro were a way of keeping up a running communication, in Shea's words, without having to type up long memos. Even if I didn't see the project officers directly, I'd at least been in touch with them, and they'd been back in touch with me. I'd never seen it done before, and I haven't seen it done since, recalled the project manager for the LEM. Shea came into the organization and he said, "I want only those things that you want me to read and that you want some kind of answer on. Just don't tell me things are going along great, but if you want some decision, do it through your weekly activities report." So we'd send them in on Thursday, and on Monday morning you'd have your copy back with his comments on it. He could never figure out where Shea got the time. By now, in 1964, the program had exploded in size. Faget's engineering division alone employed 1,400 men, serving, among other duties, as ASPO's technical resource. At North American's Downey plant near Los Angeles, 4,000 engineers were working on the command and service module. Grumman was going full speed on the lunar module. Other contractors were making the spacesuits, the guidance and navigation systems, and a dozen other major systems, not to mention the hundreds of smaller contracts and subcontracts. And this was just Joe Shea's shop, having nothing to do with the one being run out of Marshall to build the Saturn V, and a third one at the Cape to build the VAB and Complex 39. All of these systems were being designed, developed, and assembled simultaneously. The most minute change in one system was likely to require a cascade of changes in others. The complexity of the program and the coordination required to keep all the pieces growing in harmony increased exponentially. The coordinating power for the spacecraft was in Shea's hands, and he exercised it without a blink. As huge as the program was becoming, with its growing paraphernalia of collective decision-making, any decision about the CSM or the lunar module ultimately came to Shea, and Shea didn't worry about getting a consensus. In the fall of 1964, for example, he established a change board that would systematize and limit the changes being made to the spacecraft. But when it came to the final decision, the one man whose opinion really counted was Joe Shea. An engineer who had to deal with Shea remembered what it was like. If you had a change you wanted to propose in the spacecraft, and if it got by the change board, the last step in the process was to go into Shea's office on the 7th floor over in Building 2 at MSC. You'd walk in, and there Joe would be, by himself behind his desk, and you had to explain to him what it was you wanted and why it was absolutely essential that this change be made in the spacecraft. And then Joe would begin to grill you. There was no point in trying to sidestep or fudge an answer. It made no difference if Shea wasn't a specialist in your area. If you understand it, you can make me understand it, Shea kept saying, and you had better understand it absolutely cold or Shea would dissect you. Also, you had to keep ahead of him, which could be difficult. He'd stop you in the middle of a presentation and say, "You're going to have to include that you need 4 batteries in the circuit," one engineer recalled. And you'd say, "I'm going to get around to that." And he'd say, "Well, tell me right now why the hell we need 4 batteries. And goddammit, if you can't tell me why we need 4, then you ought to come back and see me next week. You're wasting my time." At the end of the meeting, Shea would say yes or no, and that was it. It took people a while to get used to that, and sometimes during his first months at Houston, an item that Shea had decided against would be brought up at another meeting. "I want to tell you that an adverse decision is not a decision delayed," Shea icily informed an engineer one day, and after that, the practice stopped. "I never ran the change board as a democratic process," Shea acknowledged. "The better is the enemy of the good," Shea told them again and again, a favorite maxim among engineers, sometimes rendered as, "the perfect is the enemy of the good." The biggest problem with a new product in its development phase, Shea thought, was that a good engineer could always think of ways to make it better. This was fine, except that they couldn't keep changing the spacecraft forever. Sooner or later, they had to lock it into one configuration so that they could make that configuration work. Keep the changes down. Keep it simple. That was the other half of the Shea doctrine. To Shea, it seemed as if everyone was saying, Apollo is the most complex job in the world. Therefore, every part has to be as complicated as possible. And that was exactly backwards. What they should be trying to do was figure out how to do things as simply as possible, with as few ways as possible to go wrong. Fuel gauges, for example, in the tanks in the Reaction and Control System, RCS, on the spacecraft. Okay, Shea agreed, it's tough to measure how much fuel you've got in a tank when you're in zero gravity. The usual devices don't work. And furthermore, it was vital that they keep enough fuel in those tanks right up to the end of the flight, because the RCS was what put the spacecraft in the right attitude to enter the atmosphere. The people who wrote the specifications for the fuel gauges had reasoned that, because it was so important, they needed a highly accurate fuel gauge system. The way they would do it was to build a Geiger counter arrangement that would infer the bulk of fuel left in the tank by the attenuation of radiation sources that would be transmitted through the fuel. It was a challenging bit of technology, no doubt about it. So challenging that the gauge they had developed so far was accurate only to about 10%, and it kept failing quality tests for reliability. Shea let this process run for a couple of months, and then stepped in. "This thing doesn't make any sense to me," he said. "We don't need anything that complicated." Shea had a Karmann Ghia that didn't even need a fuel gauge because it had a little reserve fuel tank that he could switch to. And that's what they ended up doing for the RCS fuel tanks. They had a big tank that they used during the mission, and a little tank, not to be touched unless the big tank ran out, but that could get the crew home safely. No more nuclear gas gauge. There was the problem of the heat shield. The specification the North American engineers were trying to meet required, logically enough, that the heat shield maintain its integrity under the extreme shifts from cold to heat that it would experience on its way to the moon and back, depending on whether it was in sun or shadow. But when they began testing the heat shield material under entry conditions, they found to their consternation that after exposure to severe cold, it began to crack and craze and flake. They were going to have to create a new heat shield material, which would take untold quantities of money and time. Shea asked how long it took for the heat shield to cool down to the point where the problems began. The answer was about 13 hours. So why did the spacecraft have to stay in the same attitude for that long? Why couldn't it rotate so the heat shield would remain nice and warm all the time? And that was the origin of what came to be known as the barbecue mode, or passive thermal control, in which the spacecraft rotated once an hour all the way out to the moon and back. Keep it simple. In Shea's mind, nothing was sacred about the specs for the individual components of the spacecraft. There were only 3 sacred specs, and they were man, moon, decade. If those are the real 3 things you've got to do, then everything else can be traded off underneath, he would tell them, and so he kept going back to the why of things. Why these numbers and not others on the spec? Was the product good enough to do the job it was supposed to do? Was the job it was supposed to do in the spec the job it would have to do on the flight? Because if we fail a qual test and if I have to send it back to redesign, Shea explained, then I have a less mature product when it comes back than I had already gotten up to that point. The better is the enemy of the good. Again and again he preached, hey, it isn't that complicated. It is very understandable. The engines work this way. The guidance system works that way. The transistors work this way. So don't get yourself in a state of mind thinking that it's too complex. It really is very simple. It's piece by piece. It's awfully big, that's all, Shea kept saying. Piece by piece, it's simple. Sometimes it seemed a losing battle as contractors became so obsessed with the specifications that common sense got lost in the shuffle. Honeywell, for example, was late in delivering the autopilot for spacecrafts 012 and 014. The reason, they told ASPO, was that they were redesigning some connectors and printed circuits to pass Shea's humidity spec. How badly had it failed, Shea asked. Well, actually, they hadn't even tested it against the humidity spec. What they were doing was immersing the connector board in water so they would be sure of passing the humidity test when they got to it, and they were having trouble getting it to survive the immersion. Keep it simple. Keep to the schedule. Do your job or get out of the way. Shea's methods could be abrasive and tough, but they could be exhilarating. It all depended on your point of view, and the people down in Houston had all sorts of opinions of Joe Shea. He was too hard on people, too hard driving. Reminds you of a military guy, said one engineer. Take that hill and don't worry too much about the casualties. No, said another. If you came in and had the right story and if you didn't try to bullshit him, because he was too darn smart to be fooled, he treated you pretty well. That was the key, said another. Shea had a big ego, but he was extremely sharp and he was fair. He just wanted to know that you knew what you were talking about. Wait a minute, another said. Shea was an egotist, very much so. If you buttered him, you got the gravy jobs. But he was watching from afar, he added, and other people that I got to know real well after I transferred over to ASPO thought he was great. Yes, but he was pushing too fast on the hardware, said others. He'd be out at Downey during the graveyard shift, signing off on things just to keep to the schedule. That's right, said one of the inspectors. He was out there telling North American, hey, hurry up, don't worry about that little stuff, those little things. Joe was pushing kind of hard. But then, of course, he added, you had to. They'd have never got anything out of that plant if he wasn't pushing. At least, said still another, there was no doubt about who was running ASPO. Shea wanted complete control, and he had it. And what of Joe Shea and Max Faget? Well, said Shea later, a little abashedly, Max grew on me. Despite their rocky beginnings, Shea and Faget forged a friendship. Professionally, they worked out a system whereby Shea and ASPO tapped into Faget's expertise over in engineering without either of them stepping on the other's toes. And it turned out that Nancy Faget and Barry Shea liked each other too, so as time went on, the families became friends. It was always to be a friendship with an edge, as could hardly have been otherwise with two men as competitive as Faget and Shea. One time after Faget had started jogging in his spare time, they were on a plane to Washington, and Faget announced to Shea that, although Shea might once have been a runner in school, Faget was getting pretty fast himself. In fact, Faget thought that he could beat Shea. Shea doubted that. Later that day, pedestrians walking near the Georgetown Inn could see two men in early middle age, one tall and one short, racing up the crowded sidewalks of Wisconsin Avenue in a 100-yard dash. Shea won. It was that kind of relationship, Shea said, and they had a lot of fun with it. So Joe Shea became part of Houston, and as time went on, he thought of himself less and less as a headquarters man. He found himself liking the NACA hands, even though he insisted on continuing to call them the Fly Boys and liking the organization. Houston was the only place I've ever seen, he recalled, where every guy was comfortable in his job. He didn't want a promotion. There was no jockeying for position. There was real rapport. Shea never became fully part of the Space Task Group family. That was probably impossible for anyone who hadn't been at Langley or Lewis, but it wasn't necessary. These were Joe Shea's glory days, and whatever the swirl of opinions about this gifted, enigmatic man, he was taking an effort that had been foundering and driving it forward. This, said Tom Markley later, was the reason Shea walked into a staff meeting one Monday morning to find everybody sitting there, feet up on the table, all with red socks on. What that showed was our love for the guy, Markley said. He paused to reconsider his choice of words. Not love, exactly. Joe didn't let many people get that close to him. They wore the socks out of deep respect and admiration for Shea, he said. He was a walking encyclopedia, a design guy, a systems integration guy, and not only that, but he could understand contract negotiations, and he could handle senators and congressmen when they came down just as well as he could handle his own design people. Joe Shea could do it all. When the pressure got too high, they had one other thing going for them. Down at Houston, we could argue like hell, Shea recalled. But afterwards, we would be out in the parking lot and look up at the moon and say, "You really want to go there?" And the answer was always, yes.
And that was Chapter 12, Part 2 of Apollo by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. Back in a minute. Thank you. And this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that rights are not collective. They are joint and several.